Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I'm Damon Martin.
And my safe word is actually Patrick Guerra.
Patrick, this week we are reviewing. It's weird. This film is getting a lot of buzz. I don't know that it's going to be number one at the box office, that kind of film, but I feel like in the horror community, in the thriller community, in the cinephile community, this is going to be one of the most talked about films of the year. Yes, indeed. I'm talking about our film tonight, Strange Darling.
Strange Darling, released in August of 2024, starring Willa Fitzgerald as the lady, Kyle Gallner as the demon, Barbara Hershey as Genevieve, and Ed Begley Jr. as Frederick, written and directed by J.T. Molnar. Damon, I gotta say, this doesn't happen for us often, but a studio actually reached out to you and said, hey, will you guys cover this for the podcast? And I wanted to kind of make this clear because I think a lot of people assume when they see influencers on TikTok or Instagram, they just assume these guys paid you to give them a good review. The name of the company, the studio, is Magenta Light, and Miramax is the distributor of this film. They brought us out. They gave Damon a screener. They gave myself a ticket to the premiere in Hollywood. They didn't pay us a dime. They just wanted us to talk about the movie. They want to get their movie out there. So I wanted to make that clear right off the top that we're not being paid to talk about this movie, but we are here to tell you that this movie kicks fucking ass. And I know you're like, whoa, wait a minute, you just fucking gave away the whole podcast. We're definitely not going to be doing that because I think this is one of those movies where you really have to go in as cold as possible. This is kind of the Patrick dream. You can watch the trailer, and I think actually it's not a bad idea to watch the one trailer. Don't read up on it. Go in cold and prepare for an incredible ride. Damon, Strange Darling is something special.
This movie, the trailer, when I saw the trailer immediately, I was like, ooh, I'm intrigued because I'm a big fan of Kyle Gallner. I think we all are. He's a horror king, so to speak,
Right.
Scream king, if you will. And I've been a big fan of Willa Fitzgerald ever since she starred in the Scream TV series. Of course, she's also been in Reacher. She's incredible in that. She's also in the most recent show, The Fall of the House of Usher. She's a great actor. I'm just a big fan of her as well. So those two pieces of the puzzle were already in place, and I was like, okay, I'm on board. But the trailer was really unique. And again, here's the thing about that trailer, because the trailer I played was the latest trailer. There's a couple trailers. The one I just played was like the 1 minute version of a trailer that just more recently came out. And if you heard that on the podcast version, not the video version, I never put that on the video version, you'd be like, man, that tells you a lot about her. You kind of have an idea what it's about. I promise you, you don't. And that's what's great about this. And I actually, so while Patrick got to go to the premiere, lucky him, I got to interview J.T. Molnar, and the cinematographer for this movie is none other than Giovanni Ribisi, who you should know as a very, very good actor. I'm a big fan of his. I actually told him when I interviewed him, I said, when I was in college, I think we quoted Boiler Room more than any other film at that time. We were huge Boiler Room fans. It was like The Wolf of Wall Street before The Wolf of Wall Street, based on the same story. It's based on the Jordan Belfort story, basically, and they just crafted it in a different way into Boiler Room. But when I saw his name attached, I was like, is this the same Giovanni Ribisi? And sure enough, when we sat down to do the interview, I was like, this is freaking awesome because I'm a big fan of his. But he does the cinematography. So I had a chance to interview J.T. Molnar, Giovanni Ribisi, and Willa Fitzgerald. You got to go to the premiere, so we kind of got like two halves of the story here. I got to actually talk to them. But when I talked to J.T. Molnar about it, I actually asked him about the trailer, and he admitted that he didn't cut the trailer. It was the studio, but he was super impressed with the way they did it because his entire idea going into this for every audience member, and I'm saying this to everyone out there listening to this podcast as well, go in as cold as possible. The trailer's fine. And he actually said, I was super impressed by the way they cut the trailer. It teases, doesn't give anything away. And when I said, I mentioned in the intro, this is told in non-linear format, that's not a spoiler. Just so you're aware, that's just telling you that this is not a straightforward from A to B or A to Z movie. You're going to get a couple jump arounds. And that is what makes this movie so fascinating. But So talking to them after I'd seen the movie, I sat down and again, just like you said, we didn't get paid for this. There was no advertisement. This is an honest review, and we've told our audience many times we will never give you a dishonest review. We're never going to sit here and tell you something's good if we really didn't like it. So I'll be honest. Like they gave me a screener. I had the interview coming up with Willa Fitzgerald and the director and the cinematographer, and I sat down. I was like, oh, I hope it's good. I really do because trust me, I've had those interviews with people before where I've not been a great fan, and of course I'm not sitting here being like, so your movie sucks. Why did it suck? I'm not that guy in an interview, but you have to kind of dance around it when you do interviews to not be like, outwardly cruel to somebody. And I was like, man, I the trailer's great. I just hope it's good. And I sat down and watched it, and I got done, and I texted you right after, and I said, I'm not going to say anything, but I think this might be one of my favorite films of the year. I was genuinely blown away. And then you went to the premiere on Monday, and I texted you right afterwards, and I was like, what'd you think? And once again, I had the pucker factor going on where I was like, did Patrick like it? And the result was...
Loved it. No, it's a special movie. And I was sort of like, wow, they don't need us. Like they're out there going to podcasts and influencers, and a lot of them were there to promote it. But the truth is the landscape has changed, and they do need podcasters and influencers to talk about their movie, because a movie like this back in the day, this was 100% like a Miramax movie from the 90s. But in the 90s, a Miramax movie like this would have been the top story on like, E! Entertainment or whatever back in the 90s. You'd have been talking with all the stars. They'd have been interviewing them all around town. This edgy indie thriller, blood, guts, and craziness movie. And it would have made like $100 million at the box office. Those days are dead and gone. And now they need people to talk about these movies. And I'm actually like kind of honored. I'm like, cool. They trusted us to talk about this movie. And I'm glad, because it's one of those kinds of movies. It's really one of those kinds of movies that would have been incredibly memorable. And I'm sure our fans are like, hey, cool. Would you tell us what the fucking movie's about already? Like, okay. Simply put, the basic plot is nothing what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. Everything about that plot is true. Everything about that plot will happen in this movie. If I told you more than that, I mean, a little more than that, I can tell you. But if I really got into like the big parts, the big swings in this movie, it really does destroy the experience. The experience is so interesting and unique. And even I, who have watched thousands of movies in my day, when it kicked off and it made it very clear that we were not starting at the beginning, I was like, I wonder why. And then it moved around to another spot, and I was like, why here? And then it moved around to another spot, and I was like, okay, I think I know what's going on. And then another spot goes, and I go, is what happening? Is what I think is happening? And then it starts to happen. And this does become, and many people have said this already without spoiling anything, it becomes this deadly game of cat and mouse. But Damon, it goes beyond that. This movie is very highly stylized. It's got very interesting dialogue. It's funny. It's sharp. It's super edgy. I mean, it's edgier than some of the horror movies we've talked about this year. I really do think that.
It's super dark too. Let me be honest about that. Like it's
hell
dark.
Yeah.
Very dark.
No, it goes very dark. I was sitting. I was kind of surrounded by what I would call civilians, or considering that you and I watch Terrifier 2 just for fun, just to have on while you're making dinner. These people were cowering in their seats. The woman next to me was like trembling and looking through her fingers like it was 1979, and the chest burster was coming out of the guy's chest. You know what I mean? Like that kind of terror. Those kind of reactions from audience members at this screening, now is it going to do that for, hardened horror fanatics like you and me? No, but we can appreciate the rawness of it all. I think it's an incredibly raw movie, and it will make you go, God damn, that's pretty heavy.
Well, this is also, I think, another thing you got to say, because we've talked about this a lot. What falls into the category of horror, and I think anyone who's listened to our podcast for any length of time knows my opinion is more is more. Like, I want inclusion. I don't like excluding things because they're kind of horror, and you're like, well, that doesn't really qualify. To me, if it has the tinge of horror, I want to talk about it because that's how you bring in more fans. And how do we get more horror movies getting made? We've seen the box office. While a lot of movies have struggled at times, horror continues to find success at the box office. And no, we're not getting Deadpool and Wolverine numbers, but for a movie that costs $8, $10, $12 million and it makes, $70, $80 million, that's a massive, massive success. Alien Romulus, of course, $80 million budget, and it's absolutely blowing up and doing great. And congratulations to Fede Alvarez and everyone else involved in that film. But even smaller horror films and thrillers, they've been doing really, really well at the box office. And so, again, for me, it's more is more. I want to include this. But the thing about Strange Darling, it is an erotic thriller. It is a serial killer thriller. But it is also horrific. And it is a brutal film. Like, there are more than a few uncomfortable moments in this movie. And sometimes when you think of scares, and we talk about this all the time when we do our Is It Scary category at the very end of the show, we always make sure and preface that by saying what's scary to me and you may not be scary to other people. And we also preface by saying that you and I are completely fucked up. And we've seen so many horror films that what scares the absolutely normal, person going to a movie theater probably doesn't scare us. So we always kind of grade on that scale. What I loved about Strange Darling is it is scary in moments. It is thrilling in moments. It is harrowing in moments. And it is fucking brutal in moments. Like, there are some really uncomfortable scenes in this movie that I was a little cringy in my seat. Not in a bad way, like, oh, this is cringy, not like that. More like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, this is so dark. And I was blown away. And I think what impressed me the most about this kind of a film is really it's a minimalist movie. While you mentioned Ed Begley Jr., who is great, I like Ed Begley Jr., watched him in, Better Call Saul, a lot of other things, and Barbara Hershey, who is a bit of a hot horror icon, of course, coming from Insidious and going all the way back to some of her other films back in the day. Barbara Hershey is an iconic actor. Don't want to take away from their roles in this film. They definitely have a part in this film. But this is a study of Kyle Gallner and Willa Fitzgerald's characters. These are our stars, and they are at the forefront the entire time. When you have a film like that, in my opinion, Patrick, maybe you disagree with me, but when you focus on two characters, really, sometimes it's one character, but two characters, you run a real dangerous line, because if things don't go well with one person or there's just not that chemistry, the movie falls apart. That's why most movies are an ensemble. You may have a lead in the movie, but it's always an ensemble. You know what I mean? Like, I mentioned The Wolf of Wall Street. Like, yes, Leonardo DiCaprio is the lead of that movie, but you get other great performances around him throughout that entire film. This is a character study of two people. And to me, that's risky, because if they don't have the chemistry, they don't have the timing, something falls apart in one part of the story, it just falls apart for the whole thing. I'm here to tell you, this might be one of the best two-person show movies I've ever seen. I mean, it is incredible. And the chemistry between Kyle and Willa, and when I say chemistry, that doesn't just mean like, oh, they're hot for each other. I'm just saying, like, chemistry on screen, it's invigorating, it's thrilling, it's remarkable. I was totally blown away by so many different aspects of this film.
Strange Darling is what you would call in the business a two-hander. It is Kyle Gallner and Willa Fitzgerald, and it is a showdown. I wouldn't even call it cat and mouse. I would call it like cat and rat. Like it's a real showdown, and it's very, very intriguing. I mean, incredibly intriguing. And I think JT Molnar had to be pretty psyched up when he realized that he had the two of them at the top of his movie, because he was like, cool, no matter what goes on, I know they're going to deliver. And they really do. I mean, these are really incredible performances. And for me, Strange Darling it sits in a very interesting place, because yes, we are a horror podcast, but we have talked about thrillers multiple times on this podcast. Even this year, we talked about Love Lies Bleeding, and I think it definitely dips its toe into horror. So my question to you, Damon, or I guess I'll say this statement, Damon, and I'd love to see your thoughts on it too. I think a movie becomes a horror movie when you inject dread into it, right? We've talked about dread on this podcast since the very beginning. Strange Darling is an incredibly dreadful film. It first of all obscures the truth from you and leads you down a path, and then it turns the corner and you reveal what is really going on. And when what is really going on is revealed, you are like, holy shit, so how does this all play out? And now you have this superior position, and now you're going to go back in time, and now you're going to see something from another angle, and it creates a whole new experience. This is a very clever movie. It could have gone totally wrong, but instead it kicks your ass in the best way possible.
So the best way I know this is a weird comparison, but there's certain movies that when you get the big reveal, you once you know it, it's hard to go back and watch that movie because you're like, well, I already know the secret. I think the easiest one to throw out there is The Sixth Sense. You can never experience that again for the first time. You can still enjoy the movie, but that thrill you got when you're like, holy shit, Bruce Willis is a ghost. Sorry, I spoiled a movie that's 30 years old. That you can't ever truly experience that again. But I think of a movie like The Usual Suspects, which is one of my favorite all-time films, and the big reveal at the end of who is Kaiser Soze, and it's so brilliant. But what I loved about that movie was it wasn't the same experience as The Sixth Sense, whereas like I knew the secret, so you'll never feel that again. When I would go back and rewatch Usual Suspects, now I go back and look for clues. Where did this come from? Where did the story come from? How did it unravel? What didn't I see the first time around? What little hints should I have picked up on that I didn't pick up on who is actually the big bad in this movie? And I've seen The Usual Suspects dozens of times. It's one of my favorites. What's great about Strange Darling is that it subverts expectations and it totally dumps you on your head with all the different layers to this film. And when it finally unravels, when you finally pull at the final thread and it comes off the spool, you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming, and this is a wild, wild ride. But when it was over, my first thought was, I want to see how Patrick reacts because I know the secret you didn't know, but I wanted to see what your reaction was. And part two of that was, I can't wait to see it again and rewatch to see what I missed or what I picked up on. And I did that tonight before the podcast, and I was like, oh, it's just so subtle and so brilliant and such good writing and such good execution and acting. And it's just all the way around. It is just a nonstop impact film. And I think that's what I like most about it. Again, when I compare it to Sixth Sense, I'm not saying you can't enjoy The Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense is a great movie. But the experience I had with that versus like The Usual Suspects, I don't revisit The Sixth Sense very often. It's a good movie, but I don't feel the need to revisit it very often. The Usual Suspects, I do. And that's kind of why I compare it to Strange Darling, because while there's some secrets in this film that once you see it and you have it happen, you're going to be like, holy shit. But this movie is so good on so many different levels that when it was over, I was like, my first reaction really was, I can't wait to watch it again because now I know it's coming and I can't wait to see how it all unravels. It's really, really brilliant storytelling and filmmaking and acting all wrapped into one. And that's all you can really ask for in a movie.
Damon, should we start giving out some awards before we get into spoilers? Because this is one of those movies that back in the day we would have given a lot of awards to.
Yeah, and we are going to give a lot of awards to, but we're not going to give the spoiler awards. So let's get into some of our categories here. And so do we want to start with best performance? Is that what we want to start with? Is that?
I think so. Yeah, I can do this without spoiling it.
I think I can. So of course, this is our new category that we name. This is our new category for best performance. Welcome to Prime Time, bitch. Welcome to Prime Time, bitch. Best performance, Patrick. I'm not even gonna belabor the point. We have the same best performance. Let's talk about it.
Damon, my best performance goes to Willa Fitzgerald as the lady. Now, don't get me wrong. Kyle Gallner's on fire in this movie. Okay, he really is. But unlike you, I had no background with Willa Fitzgerald. I did not know who she was. I had to like take a picture and show it to you. I was like, "Is this Willa Fitzgerald?" Like I wasn't 100% sure. Her performance in this movie is an absolute showstopper. This is a star maker performance, and I'm not being hyperbolic about it. She plays the lady. Her and Kyle Gallner have this date, and the way her character turns throughout the movie is incredible. It really is. It really is incredible because there's always an element of danger. When these two people are in the room together, there's this incredible element of danger. And she can be so vulnerable, she can be so feral, she can be, like this movie has to suck its characters down into their primal selves. And when she gets down in there, it is jaw dropping. And the ending of this movie, which I'm not going to tell you here, her last bits of performance in this movie, I was just like, wow, who is this person? And now I must follow Willis Fitzgerald to the ends of the earth because holy shit, what a performance.
Yeah, and listen again. To be clear, Kyle Gallner is also incredible. He really does. I mean, you don't get this movie without Kyle Gallner. Let me be clear about that. But the reason I also picked Willa Fitzgerald is because unlike you, I was a fan of her beforehand, and going into this, I was very familiar with both their careers. So I was going in thinking this has a lot of promise because I actually think Kyle Gallner is incredibly underrated. He's a really, really good actor. I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for how good he is. But I was a little bit more familiar with Willa. But Willa's performances have mostly been in, like I said, I saw her in Scream, the TV series, for 2 seasons. She was incredible in that. She was great in that. And I saw her, of course, in The Fall of the House of Usher. And I've seen her in a couple other things as well. Reacher, season 1, she's great in that as well, more of an action-packed role. But this was a different role for her, and I was just stunned by how well she played this role because, as you said, this is a harrowing experience that she's not just playing dramatic. She's playing scared. She's playing vengeful. She's playing just every emotion under the sun and every action under the sun that you can pack into one performance. And we've talked about this before, Patrick, that like some actors say this very openly that, horror and comedy are the two hardest genres to tackle sometimes because they're all about timing. Some actors just don't like doing comedies because they don't have that timing down. Or when it comes to horror, they don't have the timing down to act scared, to react properly in a scary moment. And I've heard a lot of actors be very honest about that. Watching Willa Fitzgerald in this film, she hit every emotion. It was like the rainbow color. It was like the Lucky Charms box of emotions. It was all over. And she did everything great. And I think that was just what was amazing. But again, even though she is our shared best performance, I do want to be clear, Kyle Gallner, you don't make this movie without him. You don't have this movie without him.
He's an incredible accent to her. I mean, he's not a supporting character. They're the stars of the movie. But it's just like he's the yin to her yang. Like I couldn't see these two not being together on screen. It's absolute electricity. It really does make me yearn for the old days of cinema. Like the old days are now the 90s, unfortunately. But just like this would have put these two in the stratosphere. It would have been like Kyle Gallner's the next big thing. Willa Fitzgerald is the next leading lady. Like it would have opened so many doors. So that's why I think it's so important for us to be here to like get the word out because these are next level performances.
And for those who are like, you keep talking about these early 90s, and for some of our younger audience, like, what are you talking about? The early 90s had a real infatuation and love affair with indie directors, and it started with Quentin Tarantino when he released Pulp Fiction. Now, of course, Reservoir Dogs was first, but Pulp Fiction won the Palme d'Or, and everyone thought it was going to clean up at the Oscars. It didn't. It's still a crime to humanity to this day that Pulp Fiction didn't win Best Picture and Quentin didn't win Best Director, and Samuel L. Jackson got robbed for not getting Best Actor. But it started there, and it continued with Robert Rodriguez with Desperado and El Mariachi, and then, of course, Kevin Smith with Clerks, Richard Linklater. There was this, like, indie love in the early 90s where these guys and girls were making movies for next to nothing money-wise, and they were just brilliant pieces of filmmaking. And it was the first time that things were being done outside of the studio system, where, Kevin Smith made Clerks for $28,000 on credit cards, and then it sold to Miramax. They bought it, but he made it on his own. And Tarantino was a guy who worked at a video store. He didn't have any formal film training. He didn't go to NYU Film School or USC Film School. He worked in a video store. He loved movies, and that's how he learned how to make movies, was by watching movies. So that's what we're talking about. Like, in this day, you're absolutely right. If Strange Darling came out in 1995. JT Mulner would be like, oh, Tarantino, Rodriguez, Smith, and Mulner. Like, that would be. Right. It sounds like a law firm, but that would be the direction. People would be like, oh my God, this guy's brilliant. So you're absolutely right. That's what we're talking about. We say like the early '90s. There was like a love affair with indie directors at that point.
Yeah, something tells me I think JT Mulner will get more work out of this. It's just like he's going to have to work for it. This is going to have to win some Independent Spirit Awards or something. It's going to have to get some buzz for him. Hopefully, a little bit of box office. I'm holding my breath for them, because I think it's an incredibly accomplished movie, and I think that rolls kind of right into my MVP, Damon.
So our MVP award, as we always say, is the Ken Foree Banana Hammock MVP award. This goes out to great character actor Ken Foree from the movie From Beyond, when he jumped down a flight of stairs and into a basement to kill a creature wearing nothing more than a thong bikini. If that's not an MVP performance, I don't know what is. So, Patrick, when it comes to Strange Darling, who gets your MVP?
My MVP goes to writer-director JT Mulner. The directing in this movie is fantastic. The casting in this movie is fantastic. These are two crucially important things for a director to do. But the writing, Damon. This script is pretty dynamic. It's pretty interesting. It has a lot to say without saying a lot. It's not the talkiest movie. When it does talk, it's brilliant dialogue. The way the movie is mapped out is incredibly clever. This is a fantastic script. And I love hearing that it came to him easy. It just means that like he was meant to write it. I think that's what it means. He really put something on the paper that translated very well to screen. And I was in love with the dialogue. And you mentioned Quentin Tarantino, who I know is your favorite director, bar none. You know how I feel. I don't hate Quentin Tarantino. It's just he's not my favorite thing in the world. What I loved that this very much did feel like a Quentin Tarantino movie, but also not at all like a Quentin Tarantino movie. JT Mulner's voice is all over that script. It doesn't feel like he's doing a parody of Quentin Tarantino. That happens all the time with indie films, and they are insufferable. Okay, I don't love every Quentin Tarantino film, but when you try to be Tarantino, it's even worse. Like, just don't. Just don't. Don't try to copy him. He has created a very specific style that his actors, that his writing is perfectly suited to. Quentin Tarantino has created his own little biosphere in the film business, and you can play in that field when he's the one doing that writing. JT Mulner was smart enough to go, this dialogue, these characters, they don't have to act like Quentin Tarantino characters. Who are the JT Mulner characters? And they did it. They did it so well. They were so raw and natural. I'm also a sucker for the 1970s American New Wave, which I know Quentin's actually pretty fond of himself. He's more an exploitation guy. I was a little bit more on the high, like award-winning stuff, the Deliverance and Dog Day Afternoon and Network. Like that was kind of my jam from the 70s, the shit that I like from the 70s. This feels a little bit more like those in that the dialogue is raw and the dialogue is truthful, and it doesn't have that weird heightened sense that only Quentin Tarantino is actually really good at. Everybody else is just pretending. JT Mulner doesn't try to make these characters impossibly cool. They're cool because they're flawed, and he gets that. It's an A+ script.
The script is incredible, and the direction is incredible as well, but I was so blown away. And when I interviewed JT, I asked them, I said, this is nonlinear storytelling. And I said, when you wrote this, did you write it linear? Did you write it straightforward and then chop it up? Because the way this thing comes together piece by piece as a puzzle doesn't feel like it was written in acts. Like it takes place in acts, like in terms of like there are 6 parts and it takes place over the course of the movie. And he said, no, I wrote it just like you see it in the film, which I was stunned by that because everything fits together so well. I honestly felt like you had to write this linearly and then you just chopped it up and put it together, like that. And that when you say nonlinear storytelling, of course, that goes back to Tarantino, Pulp Fiction. And I just recently listened to one of my favorite podcasts, The Rewatchables, which I've openly said we've 100% ripped off on some of our categories. They did a massive episode on Pulp Fiction recently, and they were talking about, like, after Pulp Fiction came out in '94, how many people just started putting out movies trying to be Tarantino, the crime thrillers that were kind of funny, really edgy, and some of them even had the nonlinear storytelling. And he's just like, they were never that great. They were always, like, you could just tell they were just trying desperately to recapture the magic that Tarantino did. And as you said, what I love about J.T. Mulner's direction and writing here is that there are elements of that. You can definitely get the influence, but this doesn't feel like I was trying to be Tarantino 2.0 or Robert Rodriguez 2.0 or anybody else. And I think that's what makes it work, because he said, hey, there's an element of this I get, and I can inject that into my script. That comes down to the characters and maybe the nonlinear storytelling, but everything else is all J.T. Mulner. And I think that is what really separates this film from so many others, is that it's wildly, wildly original.
Very original.
So for me, my MVP, listen, my initial instinct for MVP is J.T. Mulner because he's incredible. But I'm actually going to give my MVP in this award to the cinematographer, the director of photography himself, Giovanni Ribisi. Now, I'm doing that for a couple reasons. One, this is a beautifully shot film. And I remarked to them in the interview, not to keep referencing that. You'll see those interviews on our YouTube channel. The reason I keep referencing that, because one thing that totally blew me away about this film is a lot of it, and you know this from the trailer, a lot of it takes place in the daytime. And I was kind of like blown away by that, because so many times when you get in a thriller, it takes place at night because night is scarier. It's easier to hide things in the dark. We've talked about that many times on the show. A lot of this film takes place during the day, and that makes it harder on a filmmaker to create a scene better because you can't hide anything in the daylight. And I was blown away by that. But the scenes that do take place at night have a very distinct color and texture to them. And I asked them, and I said, I got a little bit of a Giallo feel to this film. And Giovanni Ribisi smiled and he said, you're the first person that got it. And I was like, pat myself on the back. He's like, you're the first person that brought that up. Good. He's like, good for you. He's like, absolutely, there's a Giallo influence on this film. And I was like, I felt it watching it. He's like, yep, you're absolutely right. We were influenced by Giallo with this film. It's an incredibly well shot movie, and it hits on so many different kind of genres in the film, but also the look of the film. And I think that made it stand out, because you see in the trailer, there's that really stark contrast of Willa and Kyle Gallner in the truck, and it's this just gigantic blue neon light shining off of them in the truck. And so it's very dark. There's that blue haze behind them, and then they're in the hotel room. It's dark, kind of shadowy. Doesn't look like you're not staying at the Four Seasons. It's a very dark, kind of seedy hotel room. But then right out of that, you're in the daylight. Like, there's daylight scenes. You see in the scene where Willa Fitzgerald's character, the scene that inspired this movie, where she's running in, like prison scrubs, hospital scrubs, and she's running, and that's the scene that it catches at the end of the trailer. That was literally the vision J.T. Mulner had in his head when he wrote this thing. That's daytime. That's not at night. So I just love the different ways this film was shot and how it was shot.
This is also a visual feast. It just is. It's shot on 35 millimeter film, which, for a film geek like myself, that actually means a lot. And it does take you to sort of a magical place. Something about 35 millimeter film, like, really, like, puts a, well, for lack of a better term, it puts like this film in front of you, and you're no longer, watching somebody video a performance. You feel like you've been transported to some other world with 35 millimeter film. The processing that they did to make the colors extra saturated and really pop, it matches the style of the script and the intensity of the acting. This is what cinematography actually is taking the script and the performances and accentuating them visually. You would have never guessed that this is Giovanni Ribisi's first feature film. Now, he's been the cinematographer on some short films, excuse me, and on some music videos, but this is his first feature length film, and he knocked it out of the park. I mean, it's a like now it's like, yeah, he's probably going to be getting a lot of call, especially because listen, let's be honest, he's Giovanni Ribisi, which does make it that much more interesting. You're like, whoa, the actor? Yeah, the good actor who's in cool films is also a really good cinematographer. He has an eye for performance. So where he puts the lens and why he chooses the focal length that he chooses, all of that is influenced by his own craft as a actor as well. So you're getting something that's really special right out the gate with this guy.
And I love that. I love that he wanted to be the guy shooting this film, the cinematographer, because there's a world, because Giovanni Ribisi is Giovanni Ribisi, where he's like, I want to be in the Kyle Gallner part, and he's a great actor. I'm not saying he couldn't pull it off. He probably could. He's a great actor. I love Giovanni Ribisi, but he's like, that's why when I saw the name, I was like, is this the same guy? Like, is it Giovanni Ribisi, the one I know? And it is. Like, and he does such a great job. I was just totally shocked. I feel like this is going to be his entry into directing his own films. I feel like that's easily going to be the next step of him becoming his own director. Maybe he directs JT Mulder's next script or something. I mean, I think that would be an incredible partnership, because interviewing them together, they really did seem to have a real kinship in the way this movie was made. And I'm super excited for whatever JT Mulder does next, but I will also be fascinated by what Giovanni Ribisi does next behind the camera, because I'm a big fan of him as an actor, but now that I've seen what he can do behind the camera, I'd kind of like to see him direct something too.
I'm sure that's coming. I mean, he seems to have a real passion for cinematography specifically, but I'm sure directing is coming, and he probably even has a couple of like maybe music videos or shorter films or something under his belt as a director. I think that's coming down the line, but for right now, I'm very excited to see whatever Giovanni Ribisi shoots next, because the shit looked fucking badass. Back to the 90s, Damon. I know we're sounding like broken records, but in the 90s, they took visual risks. And this movie takes a risk thematically. This movie takes a risk performance-wise. Why not take a risk on the cinematography? And for him to sort of be a newer cinematographer and just go like, these are the things I'm going to do. These are the things instincts I'm going to lean into. I mean, it delivers a complete piece.
I know you're not a massive fan of his, but the other director this kind of reminded me of visually and the way this was shot was Brian De Palma, which I know Brian De Palma is a big influence on Tarantino. I got a lot of like with the erotic thriller parts. I did see that in, and I also saw. I know it's a weird one to say visually, but I also got a little bit of the David Lynch, because David Lynch likes to shoot a lot of close-ups, and there was a lot of There's a scene, and this is in the trailer, so I'm not ruining it. There's a scene in where they're sitting in a car, and it's Kyle Gallner talking to Willa Fitzgerald's character. And while we do get a couple of two shots, which means both of them in the view, most of it is back and forth. It's a one shot. It's either Kyle Gallner's face or Willa Fitzgerald's face. It's kind of going back and forth. And the camera work is brilliant. There's a lot of really close-up images that reminded me of David Lynch and a lot of Brian De Palma as well. So, yeah, it's just an incredibly well-shot film, and that does make a difference in how you view this movie because of the reactions and seeing how they react and just seeing it shot. Again, I'm not saying you couldn't have done a two-shot where you're just literally just staring at these two characters in a car. There's plenty of great movies like that, but I think this film needed that vision from JT Mulder and, of course, Giovanni Ribisi to get what we got.
I wish I could have been in on that Giovanni Ribisi interview to talk to him about all the geeky camera stuff. But truth be told, like, I think they only gave you like 10 minutes or something like that. I could have done that for 45 alone. Just going, okay, so what lens were you using when you were doing the French over? And like that looks like what are you like a Cook zoom? What are we working with here? I would have been really geeking out on that stuff.
I was geeking when I mentioned the Giallo thing and he gave me that compliment. I was like, hell yeah! I was like, I got one. I was like, I felt really good in that moment when they're like, they both looked at each other and they're like, you're the first one who got that. And I was like, hell yeah! I was like, I'm the guy who watches way too many movies, so of course I got that.
Have you guys seen New York Ripper? Let's talk about that.
Patrick, last non-spoiler category. It's an easy one, and I think if anyone's been listening to any portion of this podcast, they already know the answer to this. So, Patrick, when it comes to Strange Darling, does it have our money?
Hell yeah, it's got our money. And let me tell you something. Yes, I talk about it all the time. So does Damon. We love the theater-going experience. When I sat in the theater, The sound design of this thing kicks your ass. It's part of the jump scares, which I didn't put any scare. Well, no. I'm giving part of my categories away. The sound alone will scare the shit out of you in this movie if other things don't. This is a big screen experience, even though it's this tiny indie film. And no, they're not paying me to tell you to go see it in theaters. Believe me, with an indie level film, they're happy if you rent it at home too. They're not going to be picky. They want you to see this movie. That's their point. I'm telling you, when I saw it on the big screen, that was part of the experience. And this movie made sure to deliver on that. It's the kind of movie I get up for. It's the kind of movie I would have been excited to go see in a theater. And luckily, I got a free ticket to go see one. I drove all the way to Los Angeles to go see it, and it was 100% worth my money.
Let me tell you how much I enjoyed this film, Patrick. They sent me a screener that I watched at home. So I actually have not seen this in the theater because it doesn't open until the 23rd, and we're recording this a day before it comes out because we've both been lucky enough to already see it. So I haven't actually had the theater experience. Now, I do have a really big giant TV and sound bars and woofers, and I try to turn my home into as much of a theater experience as I can. So it was loud as shit in my apartment. I probably really disturbed my neighbors because I watched it at like midnight, 1 a.m. when I watched it the first time. Here's how much they have my money. I'm going to go see this film again in the theater because I want the theater experience. Because even though I've seen it, I know what happens. And as I mentioned earlier, like Usual Suspects, I know the secrets. I know the twists and turns. Doesn't matter. I want to see it again. I want to see it again on the big screen. So by weekend, yeah, I'm going to go see this in theater. So that's how much they have my money. I have a screener. I've seen it for free, and they're certainly not paying me for this, but I'm telling you right now, I like this movie so much, I want to give them my money. I'm literally like, here, take my money. I don't need to go to the theater to see this. I've already seen it twice. I'm going to pay to go see it because that's how much I enjoyed this film. So does it have my money? Hell yes, it has my money. It has all my money. Take all my money.
And if you're not the theater going type, this is worth the rental. This is worth the purchase. It's a damn fine movie. It's special. Movies like this don't come around very often. They really don't.
Yeah. So, Patrick, we're going to get into spoilers. Now, I always give a warning when we get into spoilers, but for this film in particular, I cannot stress enough. If you have not seen this, we love you. We adore you as our audience. But if you haven't seen Strange Darling and you have any intention of seeing it, pause this, wait, and go see the film, then come back. Because when we get into spoilers, we are going to talk about the twists and turns and what actually happens in this movie. I'm not saying it's not, again, I compared it to Usual Suspects. I know the secrets, but I still love that movie. I want every single person who listens to this to go see it and then come back and listen to us rave about the spoiler section. So just be clear, here come the spoilers. Please go see this movie and then come back. I don't want to lose listeners, but I'm telling you, if you haven't seen this, do not let it spoil you. So, Patrick, let's get into the plot of this movie real quick and then get into some of our face-huggable moments, of our favorite moments in this film. So, this film, as I said, it takes place in 6 chapters, but the 6 chapters are chopped up. And what we learned very early on in this movie is this is a casual meeting of a young man and a young lady who are just looking for a good time. And they're in a truck. After meeting, we have to assume at a bar or some sort of local, place. They don't really get too detailed into how they got together, but they're in together and they're at a hotel and they're talking about basically going in and having sex, more or less. But they're also having that conversation, and you do see it in the trailer, of, this isn't safe for a woman. She's a single woman out with a strange guy, and this is a dangerous situation for her to be in. But we eventually get into that hotel room, and some funky, crazy, some interesting stuff happens in that hotel room. That you realize, again, this is the subversion of expectations. At one point, you're like, Jesus, he's gonna kill her. He's like literally choking her at one point, and you're like, he's a serial killer. He's gonna kill this poor woman. What you come to find out, though, however, is that the lady, being Willa Fitzgerald, is a bit of a masochist. She likes being choked. She likes the rough stuff. This was her request. And when they go back into the truck scene later in the movie, he says, I don't know how comfortable I feel about this, but I'm willing to try it. And so he goes for it. And he does go for it. The big twist, Pat, I'll just say it. as they're fooling around getting in, you kind of realize the twist, the big twist, is that Kyle Gallner's not the threat. The threat is Willa Fitzgerald, and she goes by another name in this movie, the Electric Lady. She is a serial killer known as the Electric Lady. Our serial killer is Willa Fitzgerald, not Kyle Gallner. And that's the subversion of the trailer where she has that great line where she says, "Are you a serial killer?" And they juxtapose it with another line from another part of the movie, not even that scene, where he goes, "What did you say?" And it's very dark and ominous. And then all hell breaks loose. What all hell breaks loose is she tries to kill him. She doesn't succeed in killing him. He gets away. And we also come to find out that Kyle Gallner's character is a cop. He's like a sheriff's deputy, which totally throws her on her ass because she's like, "Oh shit, I just picked up a cop and I'm going to kill him anyways." He gets the better of her before she can kill him, and then that's where the cat and mouse game starts, where he's trying to track her down and stop her when he realizes that he just had an encounter with a notorious serial killer known as the Electric Lady. Then from then on out, it's just a pulse pumping ride of unbelievable proportions. But to get there, so many twists and turns, so many things you don't see coming, and when the big reveal happened, you realize that she's a serial killer. I was just like, oh shit, because they keep hinting here and there, but when they finally give you the big reveal, you're like, oh my god.
And I won't get into the minutia of the film. It's such a fun way to it's such a fun movie to just experience. But ultimately, this problem, which is like, I'm the cat and I've caught the mouse, it's like, no, you haven't. You've caught a fucking New York street rat. This motherfucker can survive. Like, he's a grizzled cop. And let's be honest, he's probably a little edgy. He's probably done his share of fucked up shit in his day, because he could certainly play along in the bedroom. So now he was ready to play along in this game too. He's like, cool, you want to get fucking nuts? In the parlance of Michael Keaton in Batman 1989, let's get nuts. They get nuts. And what's scary about it, what becomes very scary about it, is once now you, the audience, have this superior position, you can now see, as it moves from chapter to chapter, and it moves around, like we said, non-linearly, you'll see her at a house, screaming, begging for someone to come to her aid. But now you know just what the fuck she's all about. And now you're terrified for the people that come to her aid. And before that can escalate, they cut back to another piece of the chapter somewhere else, and you see another piece of the puzzle come together. And there are a lot of bodies that end up in this wake. There aren't slashers that pile up that many bodies. And I don't want to like over exaggerate or anything, but sometimes you realize like, oh, like nobody got killed in this movie, or like 2 people got killed in a movie full of 10 people. A lot of people die. Most of the people that come in contact with the Electric Lady don't make it out. So, and they all meet grisly endings. I mean, she is a manic killer. And that's where the horror of this movie comes about. Because you're just like, okay, shit, I know what's going on now. Now I'm worried for people. Now I'm worried how people might die, if they might die, and the surprise of certain deaths. It's all in there. And the deaths are brutal. And the deaths are grisly. And even though we know Kyle Gallner is the victim in this situation, he is still charging her down like a crazed killer himself. All the elements of a great, dreadful, murder, mayhem, blood and guts movie are there.
Well, this film dumps you on your head right away, because the opening scene is literally Willa Fitzgerald's lady driving a car being chased in a truck by Kyle Gallner, who is shotgunning cocaine as he's driving, like he's Al Pacino in Scarface. And he literally stops at one point, climbs out of his truck, grabs a shotgun, and aims it at her car and blows up her back tire. I mean, it is literally a full-on chase scene. And again, it's a man chasing a woman. You got to imagine the woman is running from the man because he's trying to kill her. And so you're immediately like, oh shit. And then again, you mentioned at one point, Willa Fitzgerald's lady runs into a house, and she runs in, she's like, help me, I'm being chased, this guy's trying to kill me. And it's Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey who answer the door, and they're a couple of real weird hippies. They have quite a breakfast meal that they make in this movie where you're just like, wow, you are not trying to cut your calories. But they're like a real old school, like hippie couple. I think Ed Begley's character says we're motorcyclists, not hippies, or something. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But she goes in, she's like, I need help, I need help. And they're like, hold on, honey, we'll get you help. We're going to call 911 and then cut away into that scene. And then you go back into the truck and you see Kyle and you see the lady and the demon talking and, you know, so do you want to go get this room? And do you want to, do some stuff? And she's like, I don't know. It's not safe for a lady to be here like this. He's like, well, do you want to give me your number? And she's like, did you just try to get digits? No one tries to get digits anymore. They're very flirtatious and they're just, it's almost like in that moment, what's great about that truck scene, and it happens like throughout the movie in different sections. What's great about that truck scene is you can tell that like they're both 20 to 30 something horny single people who want to go bone in this room. But there's, at least at the moment, you think there's trepidation and nervousness on both sides. For the lady, you're thinking, well, she's going into a hotel room with this strange guy she doesn't really know. And in this day and age, that's a really, really scary place to be. And that's in the trailer where she says, like, you know how scary this is for a woman to have a good time. And then for Kyle Gallner, he yes, you mentioned, like, he's probably done some stuff, but he's also seems almost a little clean cut. Like, this is all a new experience to him. Like, he's not used to a beautiful woman being like, let's jump in your truck, go get a hotel room and do the deed. I think he's kind of like thrown off a little bit that she's so into him. Of course, you find out later that she was playing him from the very beginning to get him in that room so she could kill him. But the cat and mouse game that happens, like when you go, so when that scene, they go to the truck scene and they're having this flirtatious moment, they go back to that house and Kyle Gallner shows up at the house with a shotgun. He's like, here, kitty, he's hunting for her. And this is before you know that she's the killer. And you're like, oh shit, cat and mouse, like this is scary, harrowing. He walks in the kitchen and there's Ed Begley Jr.'s character laying face down, blood all around, dead. Now, in that moment, because when you pick up that scene, it's Kyle Gallner already in the house. You don't see him like, you see him like stalking the house hunting for the lady. You're like, oh shit, he killed Ed Begley Jr. Like, he's fucking going on a killing spree to get to her. No, not at all. It's Willa Fitzgerald who killed them too. It's just, everything subverts your expectations in this movie, and it's just like one thing after another, and by the time you get towards the end, the final confrontations, it's like a dizzying array of storytelling that's just so utterly well done.
Absolutely, Damon. Do you want to talk about our face huggables? We kind of already did, so I just kind of wanted to fire them off.
Yeah, I'll let you go on with your face huggables first and foremost.
Yeah, the face huggables of this movie, like we said, style up the ass, colorful characters. Boy, you talk about Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey's characters, fantastic. There's plenty of others. There's some cops. There's some nurses. There's just people around. Even like the one throwaway guy who's like, I got a gun too. Like, everybody in this movie is colorful and interesting. There's not a dull character in the bunch. Blood and guts, Damon. It looks and feels very real, and sometimes that's what makes something scary. Is you're like, this feels a little too actually happening. And many times in this movie, it felt like it was actually happening. And again, sitting with civilians in that theater, they were like, what the fuck? Like, it's hardcore. It's for the initiated. It's for people like you and I who really dig that shit. If you're a casual, you will be like, whoa, the blood and guts in this movie are incredibly intense. It really is. There's great scenes where you're just like, they're just right up on that wound that is just gushing blood, and it feels and looks real. I mean, credit to the makeup department and the effects department for doing their job. And most importantly, Damon, my biggest face huggable for this movie is the subversion of expectations. The way this movie lays out, it almost feels criminal. I feel dirty for even telling people how this film works. It constantly tricks you. Even if you already learned some information, it pulls you back in another way and makes you second guess yourself, makes you second guess what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, how you're experiencing it. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's relentless and nasty. And right when you think you know what's going to happen, something else happens again. That's just slick storytelling.
Two things I want to double up on there. One, the blood and guts, the effects, because what is so scary, what is so well done about Strange Darling, kind of reminds me a little bit of Silence of the Lambs in this way, when you watch Terrifier 2, and movie that, I adored, you liked it a lot, and one thing you loved was the effects. Damien Leone did an incredible job with the effects in that movie. But we enjoy it because it's so hardcore and so over the top. And dear God, I hope Art the Clown doesn't actually exist and someone's doing that to somebody.
Please.
What's so terrifying about, not to use the same word, but what's so scary about Strange Darling when I compare it to Silence of the Lambs? You remember that moment in Silence of the Lambs, the first time you saw it? I don't remember how old I was when I saw it. It came out in 91. I know I didn't see it in the theater, but I know I saw it after that when it kind of started getting buzz and was around the Oscar. I was a teenager. I was like a kid still at that point. But do you remember the first time you saw that scene where they're in the back room of the funeral parlor and they flip that girl over and she has the two diamond-shaped patterns cut out, how the gruesome that is in that moment of like, oh, shit. It's a scary moment, because this is a serial killer. This isn't Jason or Freddy or Michael Myers. This is a real thing that has happened or could happen. You remember that? Like that moment of like, oh shit,
yeah,
jarring moment. And to be fair, two diamond-shaped cutting, two diamond shapes being cut out of a person's back, it's their skin being taken off. But again, that's nowhere even on the same planet as gruesome as Terrifier. But it's scarier because it's real, because this is not this is not a supernatural killer. This is a serial killer. And I think that's what sets apart Strange Darling, because there's a lot of really bloody scenes in this movie, gory scenes in this movie. There's a moment where somebody gets stabbed in the neck, and it's just like jabbed in the neck and pulled out, and blood just starts gushing. And it's jarring when you watch it because that could happen. Yeah. That's what happens. This isn't like I'm going to peel her skin off and, hang around in her guts and I'm not Art the Clown. This is literally like jab in the neck and you're dead. And it's just jarring and shocking and so well shot and so well done. And I think that's what makes it so effective, is because while again it's a fictional story, this is a fictional story about a serial killer, and serial killers are real, and that to me makes it that much scarier because this could happen hypothetically. You know what I mean? Like this really happened. There's a moment where the lady is carving her initials into the demon, into Kyle Gallner's skin. It's really uncomfortable because she's just like digging in there and like, I think this is my best one yet. Almost like a Brad Pitt in Inglourious Basterds when he's like, you know what, Oberg, I think this is my best one yet. It's just like that uncomfortable. She's like dragging the knife across the skin. It's really intense. Part two to that, you mentioned subversion of expectations. What's so great about this movie, and what again sets it apart in my mind, is that while we just gave you the big reveal, and again, I hope you've seen this movie, they don't stop with that big reveal. There's other, like, again, not to get too deep in the plot, and towards the end, there's a moment late in the movie where you're like, Kyle Gallner's character has got her. He's stopped her. He's caught her. She's done. She's handcuffed. She's done. Guess what, Patrick? She's not done. Not by a mile. And that's how this film continues to flip you on your head, is because every time you think you figured it out, it's like getting dumped over on your head again. It's remarkable. It's like you're riding a roller coaster and you're like, oh yeah, I see the loop coming. So you go upside down. You're like, oh cool, we went upside down. And then out of nowhere, there's another loop, and you go in the darkness, and you're like, what the fuck? That's this movie, because again, I told you the big reveal. That's still not everything that is revealed in this movie. That's still not the last time you're getting twisted and turned and dumped on your head and kicked in the face. And I love that about this movie, because even though this, I would say, what is about 2/3 of the way through the movie when you figure out that Willa Fitzgerald is the bad guy or is the serial killer.
I would say that's like almost at the halfway point, somewhere like just over the halfway point.
But the scary thing is, even after you figure it out, that doesn't stop the thrills in this movie. It's not like, suddenly, okay, well now Kyle Gallner's the good guy and she's the bad guy, and it's just now a chase and you know who's chasing who. Fuck no. There's still moments where you're like, I can't believe this just happened.
You're put into new scenarios and you know how unsafe they are now. So now you're just trying to figure out, like, can everyone get out of this safely? Because I know how bad this can get. And then things will escalate. And then again, fuck with you. Like, I think subversion of expectation might be the highest honor you can get in all of movies. Because we see all types of movies, Damon. We see lots and lots of movies. if we know what's coming, even the good ones, you go, well, I kind of know what's coming. This movie, once you know what's coming, now you're worried about other things, and that doesn't lay out the way you wanted them to. That makes for a really, that's why I'm so high on this movie, because it really subverted my expectations on so many levels. And if thank goodness the people listening right now definitely have already seen the movie. They did not cheat and listen to this and fuck the whole experience up, because this is a rare one, folks. This is a rare one where you really do get your expectations subverted throughout.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Let's talk about the ending of this film, because we talk about subversion of expectations. There's so many moments when you think that Kyle Gallner is done for. And by the way, for people who like, you're not using the names, they don't have, it's Lady and Demon. So that's why I'm not saying like, it's not Bill and Lucy. Like I don't have like names like that. Literally they're called the Lady and the Demon. Kyle Gallner's character, there's moments where you're like, he's got her. He finally got her. He got his woman. He got her. He's the cop. He got her. And then there's certainly moments where you're like, oh yeah, she's going to kill him. He's dead. And then it doesn't happen. And then there's another moment. There's another moment. There's another moment. So many times. But eventually, Kyle Gallner gets got, because when he gets a little too comfortable thinking he's got her handcuffed to a freezer, he doesn't bother to check her because she's been hiding in this freezer from him, and she bounces up and sprays him with bear spray, which is horrifically painful if you've ever seen anyone accidentally get sprayed with bear mace. And she ends up literally biting his neck and ripping out his neck, and he bleeds to death. And then even after that, the cops come, because while he got to this house and he captured her, he called his cops. He's like, I'm in trouble. I need you to come help. So the cops
just don't spoil that, because I got a category for that.
The cops come and help. And even then you're like, well, she's got. No, she's not. And it just, every time. So the ending of the film itself is, once again, Willa Fitzgerald, the lady, the electric lady, gets away. And you think, she's good now. She finally got away with it, right? Not so much, right, Patrick?
Oh, not so much, Damon. No. And you know, there's a final moment in the movie where she's been through hell herself, mind you, of her own design, of course. And you go, damn it, she's going to do it again. You're so sure she's going to do it again. And then it's even in the rhythm of how she gets finally foiled. And I'm not going to bother telling you right now. Just fucking watch it. And if you've already seen it, you go, yeah, I like how she got foiled. And everybody cheered when she got foiled. But even the rhythm of that subverted my expectations. I thought something was going to happen, and it just happened a moment sooner than I thought it would. And that changed the experience right away. Just expert directing. Yeah. And she finally runs out of luck. And it goes back to my best performance. To watch her die is a thing of beauty, which is a weird thing to say, but here we are on a horror podcast. Watching her die was like, it was art, Damon, full art. Here's the art goon coming in to bring out the art card and say, that was a work of art. I've never seen such a beautiful, disgusting, artful portrayal of a death, because it had so much behind it. It had so much more to it than just, it wasn't even a bloody death. It was just watching a person expire. That performance was fucking incredible, man. I was so blown away. I was like, Willa Fitzgerald has my money. She has it. This woman can fucking act.
Did you notice, by the way, at the very beginning of the movie, and it played in the trailer that I played? The people who are watching on YouTube can't. I'll play just a tiny touch of this so you can hear what I'm talking about.
This is a dramatization of the true story of the final known killings of the most prolific and unique American serial killer of the 21st century.
So in the film, the opening is very Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where they open with a scroll and literally it's like that voice. Do you know who that voice was, by the way?
I do, and it's really weird. That voice that you hear there doing a very good John Larroquette from Texas Chainsaw, and you could totally tell it's the send up, by the way, of Texas Chainsaw's intro, is none other than Michael. Jason fucking Patrick plays the voiceover. That's all he does in this movie. And it's a testament, I think, to like how people felt about this script and how they feel about JT Molnar, that Jason Patric goes, yeah, I'll do that for you. Like, I'll come in and do that for you. And he was at the premiere, and I was like standing next to him, and I'm like, I do want to talk to him. It doesn't look like he wants anyone to talk to him, by the way. I don't know. He wasn't being rude or anything like that. I was just like, I'm not going to bother him. But that is indeed Michael from the Lost Boys, who is that voice.
Yeah, but he's and he's a big horror guy. I mean, he's going to be in Terrifier 3, so he's out. You know, he's got horror. I mean, his dad, of course, so, you know, the great Jason Miller, who played in the original Exorcist. So yeah, but I heard that voice, and when I found out after watching the movie, that Jason Patric, I was like, holy shit, Jason Patric. Because when you do those voiceovers, sometimes you can tell, but a lot of times, you know, they do it in a way it's like I always say I have a face built for radio because I did radio for a lot of years. I can do a radio voice. Like, I've done promos for radio, and I can change my voice enough to where I do the full on like commercial, like at the low price of $9.99. You know, I can do that, and you wouldn't know it's my voice. But when I heard that, I didn't recognize his voice at all. I was like, that's not Michael from the Lost Boys. Nope, it's Jason Patric though.
Sure is.
Patrick, let's move into our next category, which is going to be best scare, because as I said, while this isn't a traditional quote-unquote horror film, there's a lot of horrific moments in this movie. So, Patrick, what is your best scare in Strange Darling?
Damon, the best scare in this movie was the sound design. The whole damn sound design. Really fucking good. There's no like jump scares that I can think of. I don't really remember a moment where somebody appears out of nowhere. There's a lot of, again, surprises and subversions of your expectation. But when the sound kicks in the way it needs to, it had people all around me jumping out of their seats. It's incredibly intense. Kyle Gallner's character runs around with a shotgun anyway, and if you've been anywhere near a shotgun, it's fucking loud. Shotguns are really loud, really like scary firearms in their presence, and it goes off a lot of times, and it made so many people around me just wither in their seats because it was such an oppressive, heavy sound. The sound design of this movie really good, and a great testament to how sound can affect the feel of a movie. It really did add to the dread.
And they also use it in a way that's so great, because there's a scene early in the movie when Willa's character is running from Kyle Gallner, and she goes into the woods, and she has to be quiet. So it's literally just like silence of a hunter going after its prey. And so there's no music, there's no noise whatsoever. And Willa Fitzgerald's doing everything possible not to make a noise, not to make a sound, because a snapping branch will alert the guy chasing her. But then when there are moments of noise, it's like a car crash sound, and it's very jolting. So I agree. So I picked a more traditional scare, and I would say this to me was probably the one jump scare, so to speak. And that is at the very tail end of when they're in the hotel room. Willa Fitzgerald has coaxed Kyle Gallner into doing a little coke with her. You know, let's do a little coke, and let's have a little naughty time on the bed. Little does Kyle Gallner know she slipped him a dose of ketamine, and he is out. He's awake, but he is out. And so that's how she's able to basically have her way with him, and she cuts him up, and she's about ready to... She goes in the bathroom, and she finds out he's a cop. She sees his wallet, and she's like, oh, shit, he's a cop. This is a really interesting notch to add to my bedpost. And she goes out, she climbs on top of him, and she's just like, this is my most special one yet. And she turns his head. Oh, it's so great. Turns his head to the side, and she is about to jab him in the neck with her dagger. And what we find out later in the movie is that Kyle Gallner, as a cop, has a gun hidden in his boot, like a lot of cops do. They have a second piece. Most cops, if you ever see even police shows, they'll have their regular weapon, and then a lot of times they'll have a second weapon on their boot or on their other part of their body. And she pulls his head to the side, and she gets ready to stab him in the neck, and he just pulls up with the gun and blasts her ear, literally blows her ear off her head, and she falls over and she runs out of the hotel to get away from him. But that scene was so shocking in that moment, because I'm like, oh shit, because he gets away because he's chasing her later in the movie, but I'm like, how do they do this? Because he's knocked out on ketamine, and then he just has just enough wherewithal to pull the gun from his boot, and he blasts her ear off. And I was like, oh shit, it was super jarring.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think the woman next to me wet herself in that moment. She was not ready. That poor woman next to me has probably never seen a horror movie in her life. She was absolutely shook.
Yeah. Let's talk about best kill because, as you said, there's a lot of horror movies we review on here where the body count's actually not that high. Guess what? There's a big body count in this movie. What is your favorite kill in Strange Darling?
My best kill is actually Barbara Hershey. Her and Ed Begley Jr. are this hippie couple that live out in the woods, and they run into the wrong electric lady, don't they? They were looking more for Electric Lady Land, and they instead got Electric Lady, the serial killer. And she manages to escape after Electric Lady brutally kills her husband. She kind of runs off into the woods, and the Electric Lady's just like, "Fuck it! Like I can't deal with her right now. I got the demon right on my ass, so I got to do other things right now."
No, remember, because the thing about the Electric Lady is that she doesn't want to kill women. She fights very hard.
That's right.
Not
She
to kill
doesn't. She
women.
doesn't. She
And
doesn't kill women.
she puts Genevieve in the basement and locks her in there, and that's because just like later parts of the movie, like she doesn't want to kill women, so she locks Genevieve in the basement, and she's able to escape the basement. But she's just like, go in the basement and lock the door, and you're gonna stay there. And so she puts her in there. So that's how she escapes. She doesn't run from her, but she's
That's
like
right.
trying not to kill her.
Yeah, you know what throws me off is because earlier she does kill a woman. I won't tell you which one, but she does. So that's it, that part always throws me off. But yeah, she doesn't want to kill women, but she does. So anyway, later on, when you think she's caught, when she escapes yet again, she's in the back of a cop car that she has commandeered, and she's got them at gunpoint. And all of a sudden on the road, here comes just straggling along is Genevieve, played by Barbara Hershey, and she comes right up to the cop's car because she's like, "Oh my God, the cops, great!" And she's like, like totally in shock, totally frantic, and she just breaths out like, "She killed us." She killed us, and like she's completely off her fucking rocker at this point, and the camera is very beautifully placed right, has center punched Barbara Hershey right in the middle of the frame. And while she's going through this, and then just bam, a bullet right between your eyes. And that was so shocking because you're just like, you're not used to such a clean shot, a clean picture frame of somebody as they're getting a bullet through their head. It's a super, super clean frame of just watching her get a bullet right between the eyes. Super, super jarring. And I was just like, damn, like that was a really effective kill that created a lot of reaction in my theater.
Yeah, that was a great one, and also good surprise because you kind of forgot about Genevieve in that moment because she was locked in the basement. And you're like, oh, we moved on. Now she's out of the house. She's being taken with the police, and then boom, out of nowhere, she's like, help, help! She tried to kill us, and then oh shit, nope, you're dead. It's really, it's fascinating. So my favorite kill I mentioned earlier already, but I had to tell that story, which is the moment when Kyle Gallner's character gets killed because it's a rather hilarious part of the movie. There are some funny moments in this movie, but there's a rather funny moment, as I mentioned earlier, where he's like driving the truck and he's snorting coke, and he's using it as like a superpower because he's also fighting and battling against the effects of ketamine, which knocks you completely on your ass. And it reminded me, I don't know why I keep going back to Wolf of Wall Street. It reminds me of that scene in Wolf of Wall Street when he's taking the ludes and he goes back to his house and he has to save Donnie, and so he grabs the cocaine, he snorts it, and they have that scene of Popeye in the back eating the spinach, and he's like, ah! He like hulks out because he took the cocaine. Kyle Gallner at one point's in his truck, and he literally has this little pouch of cocaine. He just like sticks it in his nose. He goes, it's hilarious. But he gets to the house, and he's kind of waking up a little bit. The coke has taken full effect. He's captured the Electric Lady. He's like, this is a fucked up situation, and I'm going to have a lot of questions to answer at the police station about how this all happened, but it's over. And then she blasts him with the bear spray, and he's stumbling around. He can't see, and she grabs him and just bites his fucking neck off. And he sits down, and he's just like stunned in that moment, and blood is just splurting out of his neck, and he dies. It is... Again, that's another moment where you're like, oh, he got her. And that's towards the tail end of the movie. So you're like, is this it? Like, did he get her? And then, of course, she turns the tables on him yet again. And then she literally bites his neck out and he bleeds out. It's just a incredibly, like, jarring, but also, like, super gory moment.
Very gory, and they let it play out. You know, they don't really cut away. You know, they use a couple of different angles, but his death is on screen and it's very like heavy. You know what I mean? Like it's a heavy death, and it's heavy for the audience because they were really hoping that he'd capture her in that moment, and they completely subvert your expectations. Now, Damon, this next category, I think we should move it down to right before our controversial take. I think it fits better with that. Did you want to jump into inject this scene in my veins?
Yeah, inject this scene into my veins is our new category. We basically take our favorite scene in the film. Can I cheat with mine a little bit? Is that okay?
I love it when you cheat, Damon. That cheating is all about the fun.
Okay, so I'm cheating because it is technically one scene. It just chops up a couple times during the movie. And my favorite scene in this film is everything that happens in the hotel room between Kyle
those are
Gallner
good.
and Willa Fitzgerald, because if you spliced it together, you would get a complete story. You would get them in the hotel, like, "Hey, we're here, we're ready, we're two hot young people, we're about to bone, but one of us is a little freakier than the other, so I like a little choking, I like a little tie me up, I like a little freaky stuff," and then he plays along, and then she's kind of like, "It's just not working," and so he's like, "Well, let me amp it up a little bit," and then he really goes for it, and she's like, "All right, this is working," and so it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's like getting a little uncomfortable because she keeps kind of denying him. And he's kind of like, "I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I've done everything you want me to do and you're still not into it." And then she's like, "Let's do a little coke. Maybe that'll help set the mood." And he's like, "All right, I haven't done this in a while, but sure, why not?" And then, of course, that sets up the moment when she is revealed as the electric lady. She tries to kill him and he blows her ear off. Just the combination of every emotion and every different element you get in that scene. Because again, early on, you're literally early on, you see a scene of him just trying to choke the shit out of her. And you're like, "Oh my God, he's trying to murder her." No, that's her. She's getting pretty excited by that. That's not her. That's not her getting killed. That's her being like, "Oh yeah, do it harder." But you don't know that at the time. And so just the entire hotel scenes just make this movie for me.
The hotel scenes are bad fucking ass. I'm a particularly big fan of him stalking her down, especially when you don't know the whole story yet. It's incredibly treacherous. I could have injected those scenes in my veins, but I'm actually going to say this scene. I actually really loved you talk about when she bites his neck off. She knows exactly where to bite his neck off. She hits him right in the artery. And if you know, that's pretty much like if that ruptures, you have seconds to fix it. Seconds, not minutes, not nothing. In seconds, you will bleed out very quickly. But she snatches that piece of flesh right at his neck artery, rips it out. He stumbles back. The blood starts gushing. And she stands there with a chunk of his neck in her mouth. And the woman next to me, she's just going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And she slowly spits it onto the ground. And then screams the most primal fucking scream. Again, Willa Fitzgerald, so many great performances in this, moments in this performance. She just screams the most primal, like the scream of a banshee, like almost animalistic scream. But it's from a lot of things. It's from like, "I just killed the demon. Like I've just been through hell. I just barely got away from this situation with my life just here now." It's so guttural, it's so instinctual, it's so primal, and it'll get you right in the marrow of your bones. It's very good.
Yeah, it's a great scene. I mean, the whole thing is incredible, and there's not a bad scene in this movie. I mean, even
no, there's no bad. No, inject this movie into my veins. How about that?
Yeah, inject this entire movie into my veins. So you wanted to go. So you want to do after or before most controversial for our one category? You want to go?
I think let's do our best advice next, and then we'll do that one.
Yeah. So our next category is basically our little our version of best advice for a movie, and that comes down to this:
whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
So, Patrick, when it comes to the best advice you can take away from a movie like Strange Darling, what are you taking away? What is your whatever you do, don't fall asleep advice?
Whatever you do, folks, don't snort anything. Okay, we're living in a new world, and I don't mean to get too serious here, but fentanyl's an actual real problem, and just a fucking gram of it, a grain of sand of it inside your snortable could kill you. So please, just stop snorting things. But in this instance, I was like, dude, why are you snorting? Like, why are you snorting anything on a first date? Don't snort anything on a first date because you think you're getting an upper. Oh no, you just got a dose of trank, horse trank, right down, right down your esophagus, and you are out cold, and now you are in the hands of a deadly killer. So please, folks, take my advice. Don't snort anything.
I'm going to take it a step further and say, be very careful who you're hooking up with on a one night stand, because Tinder is a real, now, not just to be fair, I was in a serious relationship when Tinder became a thing. So I never experienced Tinder, but I've been around people, friends who have. And I'm always like, this just seems like a remarkably bad idea. Like, I'm not even talking from like, I mean, I could imagine how terrifying it is for women because, of course, things that can happen. But even for like the guy friends that I have, I'm just like, really? Like, this just seems like a remarkably bad. I just hear so many bad horror stories. Can I put you on the spot, Patrick? And I know you're a happily married man. Before I was a happily, person with my woman, I've been with my girlfriend for 12 years. I had one night stands. Did you ever have did you ever have that one night experience with a woman?
No, I've had no one night stands.
So I have. I'm not going to give them the details. No one needs to know the details.
No, I want the details right here, Damon, in front of all of our listening audience. I want the details.
I do. I actually have a what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas story once upon a time. But in the moment, the reason I'm telling the story is for this reason. In the moment, it just didn't occur to me. I'm like, there's a girl, she's hot, and we're both turned on, and, she's the one, in this particular instance, the Vegas story, she's like, let's go back to your hotel. She was a local, and she's like, let's go back now. In my head, my rational head, I should have been like, she lives here. Why aren't we going to her place? Why does she want to go to my place? In my rational head, my suspicious head, I should have been like, she probably wants to rob me and like leave me for dead or something. Like, I don't know. But that particular instance, much like Kyle Gallner, I was thinking with a different head. And so I was just like, oh, attractive woman. I'm in Vegas. I'm in my 20s. Let's go. Now, to be fair, nothing horrible happened. But yeah, like that's my advice. Be very careful with these hookups. Like whatever you're doing, Tinder, one night stands, whatever you kids call them these days. Be very careful because it can go. I'm not saying it's going to go this wrong, but it can go horrifically wrong. And looking back at myself in that situation, I'm like, what a jackass I was.
Well, I get it. And even Kyle Gallner's character is probably 35 or something like that. But here's the thing. Guys like their ego stroked, amongst other things, but they like their ego stroked, truth be told. And so you're on a first date or a blind date or just like a random hookup, or you're just at the bar and someone's giving you the right kind of eyes. It makes a guy feel like $1 million to be ogled by a beautiful woman. And so you got to watch your ass because there are women that are smart enough to know that. And they're going to go after you. Now, listen, and the ladies in the audience are going to go, excuse me, have you ever tried to talk to a guy at a bar? And I'm like, I know, I've heard all the horror stories. They seem impossible. I go, guys can't be this disgusting and weird and stupid. Yes, they can. And then some. So I get it. I know it goes on both sides. But dudes, just watch yourself is all I'm saying. If she wants to party with a little bit of nose candy and maybe some whips and chains, just maybe take her on a few dates before you fully go in. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and also to be clear, we keep saying guys and girls, if you're gay, straight, whatever it is, like I'm just
gay, straight, everything in between.
My advice is just be careful of the hookup because everyone loves the hookup these days, and I get it. I do understand the nature of the beast. Trust me, I've been there. Been a long time since I've been there, but I've been there. And I understand how tempting it is and how quickly you start thinking with the wrong side of your head, or as I said, the wrong brain. I'm just saying take a step back if you can, because I didn't. And looking back on it, I was like, God, that was a really dumb thing to do. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's my advice. Like, be careful with hookups, whatever, Tinder, Grinder, whatever it is you're using. Just be wary. You know, I'm not saying you have to be ultra suspicious, but at least have your guard up a little bit. Guy, girl, whatever. Just have your guard up. That's my only advice. Patrick, our next category. So we're now going to go back into the previous one, correct?
Yes. Now the other one.
Okay. Yeah. So now our next category is.
I kicked that fucking map into the creek yesterday. It was useless. I kicked that fucker into the creek.
This is our Mike from Blair Witch Project Kick the Map into the Creek award for the character I'd most like to punch. So Patrick, when it comes to Strange Darling, which character would you most like to punch?
Now, listen, we're not advocating for violence, even though we're talking about a very violent movie, and I'm definitely not advocating violence for women. So let's just say this is the character I most likely wanted to, I don't know, just go like, stop what you're fucking doing right fucking now. So very late in the movie, when you have all of the information you possibly need, and you know just how dangerous the electric lady is, two cops come in. They see that that Kyle Gallner's character is dead and gone, and this woman is chained to a freezer right in front of him. She's also got her pants down, and you're like, oh wow, she is painting a picture for these cops that Kyle Gallner or somebody has done something very awful to her. I get it. If you're the cop that walks in, I totally get it. Two cops walk in. One is a grizzled old Hispanic cop. The other is a young, fresh-faced woman. She immediately tends to Electric Lady, which of course you would. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, this woman, it looks like she's in real trouble, and there's a dead guy with a shotgun right next to her. Scary stuff. I get it. However, Damon, we have superior position, don't we? We know just how dangerous Electric Lady is, and just how good she is at getting out of situations. The grizzled old cop is like, hey, don't touch nothing. We don't know if she's innocent or not. I've been doing this since you were in diapers, quite literally. And the woman cop is like, how dare you? We need to tend to her right now. She's the victim. Anyone with one eye can see that. Anyone with no eyes can see this. She gives this old cop so much shit because he's like, don't move anything right now. Like, everything needs to stay right where it is. We need to secure this crime scene because he's an old cop. He's seen it all before. He's probably seen some shit. She's not. She's green. And you, as an audience member, and every audience member around me was just like, oh no, lady, you are fucking up so bad right now. You have no fucking idea what you're doing. Sure enough, the Electric Lady gets the upper hand, kidnaps both these cops, and ends up killing the grizzled cop and sending that woman cop on her way with her tail between her legs because she's like, oh wow, I genuinely fucked up. Talk about being so fucking infuriated at a character. It's been a while since I've been that mad. Probably since Mike threw the map in the river.
Yeah, so that is definitely a good one. And there were moments where I wanted to give a good slap in the head to Kyle Gallner's character because I'm like, in my head, much like my advice, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? But again, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because, like I said, men are stupid. So I understand. But I actually, funny enough, my punch in the head goes to Pete, the other cop, the male grizzled cop, who is played by the guy who played Steve Gomez in Breaking Bad. Incredible show, incredible actor, Stephen Michael Caseta. He is awesome in, of course, playing a ATF agent in Breaking Bad. But he is the grizzled old cop. And the reason why I want to punch him in the head is because clearly he's the more experienced officer. Clearly he is the boss of the situation. It's not a partnership. He is her superior. She is the young cop. He is the grizzled vet. And he just keeps bowing down to her. She's like, no, no, no. He's like, don't touch anything. This is a crime scene. We got dead bodies everywhere. I understand that she's, laying there with her pants down and handcuffed to a freezer, but we need to get we need to get CSI out here. We need to get Prince. We need to find out what's going on before we touch anything. And she's like, no, no, no. He keeps bowing down. Like, all right, Okay, do it. And when the electric lady finally turns the tables on him, he's just like, I can't read the exact language, but I'm paraphrasing her. He just goes, motherfucker. Because he knew something was wrong, but he just kept getting talked out of it. And I'm just like, dude, you are the grizzled old vet. You've been here. Even if this is not something you've ever seen before, because good Lord, I hope you've not seen something quite like this. You knew something. You knew. You just went against your instincts. He knew. Don't trust it. Let's get the guy. She may be absolutely right. Like, this lady may have just been attacked. This horrible thing may have befallen her, but we need to get all of our ducks in a row before we do anything. That is standard cop protocol, and he broke every protocol because she's like, no. We need to get her out of here. We need to get her out of the cuffs. We need to take her to the hospital. And at every turn, he's like, no. All right. No. All right. And I'm just like, when they finally get caught, and he's just like, motherfucker. That's where I was like, dude, you deserve a bullet in the head because every single time you knew not to do it, you did it anyways.
You did it anyway, didn't you? Yeah, it's a great scene in the movie. It really is. And it plays out until she fully escapes them. But a hell of a scene, really.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Our next category, Patrick.
Bullshit generalization. Many sequels have surpassed their original.
This next category, many sequels have surpassed their original. This is our most controversial or hot take of a movie. So when it comes to Strange Darling, Patrick, what is your most controversial take?
I don't know how controversial it is because I think the film indeed is trying to say this, which is women can be toxic too, folks. And boy, oh boy, is the electric lady incredibly toxic. Now, of course, she's not completely wired right. We understand that and we know that. But at no point does this movie try to apologize for who she is. She's a vicious serial killer. There is no good to her. And the damage that may have been done to her at some point in her life is never explored. They just make it clear that she is utilizing her femininity to hurt people on purpose. Very much so. And that's why I kind of wanted to wait, because indeed the toxicity from that woman cop, which was she was thinking with the other side of her brain. What she needed to do was think with like the cop side of her brain and go, yeah, we do need to secure this location first things first. She didn't think that. And she got toxic with the other cop. She basically threatened him. She's like, it's going to be on you if this goes wrong. You know, and she's not thinking about the situation. So the movie was willing to go, yes, women can be crazy toxic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you went story. I went a different direction. I went to the movie itself. I'm going to give two hot takes, two controversial. Maybe I'm not going to say controversial, two hot takes. And this one's going to be out there because I know people are going to be like, I don't think this will happen. I don't give a fuck. This is what I think should happen. JT Mulner deserves, and I'm not kidding when I say this, because we're into August now. We are getting towards the tail end of the year. JT Mulner deserves to get an Oscar nomination for screenplay. Will he?
Oh, yeah.
I doubt it. I just know the Academy Awards, they don't nominate films like this generally. But my other one and my bigger take, the one that I'm like, I'm going to die on this hill. I'm not kidding. I'm going to die on this hill. Willa Fitzgerald deserves an Oscar nomination for her performance in this movie. It is, we always, at the end of the year, we do our top 5 favorite horror films. We do a giant podcast, our favorite 5 horror films. We do best performance and all the different things. But we also, because you and I are big cinema geeks, we do our favorite films in general. Now, sometimes there's crossover. You know, we do have our favorite horror film that also dips into our favorite just film of the year. You know, you and I went and saw Oppenheimer together, things like that. Like, we're just big cinephiles. And, of course, horror is our favorite genre, but we cross-pollinate, like, at the end of the year. Like, we have our horror list, and then I always have, like, my other films that I've seen, my favorite list. Willa Fitzgerald's performance in this movie is so good that, like, when this year is over, it's going to take a fucking phenomenal performance to top her for best performance, period. In film, not in horror, in film. She is so good in this movie. It's a criminal offense if she doesn't get an Oscar nomination. That's how adamant I am about this, because I've seen a lot of movies this year. A lot. I mean, I did the Patrick thing. You keep a list of all the movies you've seen. I finally started doing it. I have a giant list of all the movies I've seen. Now, I've seen some good movies this year. I'm not saying she needs to win. I'm saying she needs to get nominated. And it's going to be a crime if she doesn't.
Willa Fitzgerald sets the screen on fire. Believe it. It's fucking phenomenal. It really is. It really is the best performance I've seen all year anywhere, you know? And I've seen a lot of great movies this year. It kicks fucking ass. It's going to fuck you up, straight up and down. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong about JT Molnar needing a nomination for Best Original Screenplay. It's just that good. I'm not fucking with you folks. No one paying me to say this. Fuck, I wish they were. I don't know how to get that money. I wish I got that money. Trust me. They didn't pay me to say this. I'm here to tell you it's one of the best movies I've seen all year long. Hands down.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying she needs to win. It would be awesome if she did, but give her the nomination. I want to see her in that audience. They pan the camera over to her and they play a little clip of her from this movie. She deserves that. That's how fucking good she is in this movie. So that's my hot take. Give her a fucking Oscar nomination. Do something right for once, Academy, because you do a lot wrong. Do one right this year. Patrick, next category, we had to throw this one back in here, which is, can we survive this horror film? Not every film deserves this one, but this one does. Because even though you've been a happily married man for many, many years, and you've never done the stupid shit I've done in my life, you can still inject yourself into this film a little bit and say, can you survive this horror film? Patrick, be honest. Are you surviving this horror film?
No, fuck no. First of all, she's a very cunning serial killer. Let's be clear about that. She's very good at what she does, and you see why throughout the whole movie. But I got to put myself in the situation of the other person, which is the demon, right? Kyle Gallner. If you are getting talked up the way he's getting talked up, you become putty in her hands. You know, I'm just putting myself in the scenario of the character. You're done for. You just are. I'm just any old red-blooded guy. It's gonna happen. That's probably why she's so prolific and so successful, because she's like, I know exactly the button to press, and she'll press it, and you will find me, with a half a pound of ketamine up my nose and a slit throat. That's just what's going on. I'm not surviving this film.
There's a great comedy bit from Eddie Murphy Raw back in the late 80s where he says, like, women figured men out. And he's like, and men are like, how'd she figure this out? He's like, they figured this out like this. She catered to his ego. And you'll see a woman can get any man because she caters to his ego. Patrick, like it or not, we are fucking egomaniacs. We like people to stroke our egos. We like people to say, man, you're good looking, or wow, you're talented, or wow, you're this or that, or whatever the compliment, whatever they are. You cater to our ego. I'm dead on the hotel bed, nose filled with ketamine, and just wondering what the fuck went wrong right before that knife goes in my neck. Yeah, because I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, I just admitted I was in a similar-ish situation years ago where the girl's like, let's go to your hotel room. Like, sure, let's go. Because you're just not thinking, and you're not thinking rationally. And we also, to be fair, a lot of guys, not saying every guy, but a lot of guys, you know, because we are, like, generally speaking, that's why the movie plays it so well. And it's in the trailer when she says, do you realize how scary this is for a woman in my position to just have a good time? Because that's generally what we fear for, is because women are far, far more likely to be victimized in a situation like that. That's not even remotely close. So me as men, we have that ego. Like, it just can't happen to us. We have that ego. Like, it wouldn't happen to us. Well, it can, it will, and it did, and I'm fucking dead on the hotel bed. So yeah, there's no way. And I don't carry a gun around on my shoe, so I'm not getting out that way either.
Exactly. I don't even have the firepower in the truck, so I'm screwed.
Yeah, we're dead. Patrick, last category, and that is, I love this one. It's not, is it scary? It's, is it strange? So when it comes to Strange Darling, is it strange?
Damon, it is strange in all the best possible ways. Strange Darling is an absolute fucking thrill ride. I loved it. I had a blast watching it. And by the way, is it scary? Ask the lady next to me who was like, can someone, get me a towel and a box of baking soda? Because I think I pissed this entire seat. I mean, she was completely horrified at this film. Horrified. So it completely works on that level too. If you're somebody who listens to us because, I don't know, you're one of our family members or something and you don't really like horror films, trust me when I tell you, Strange Darling is horrific. It's properly horrific in all those ways that we've been opining about. This movie fucks. Go get it.
Yes, 100%. And when we say strange, I want to be clear about this because we've talked about some really, one of our favorite words this year is weird movies. We talked about Cuckoo, we talked about Longlegs, and we talked about Oddity. 3 very weird movies, all in their own way. And those stories at times were a little hard to follow, and you had to figure things out a little bit. And they're not traditional, straightforward A to Z kind of movies. Couple of those we really liked, Longlegs and Oddity. One you kind of liked, and one I really didn't in Cuckoo. This is when I say strange, it's just that this is a movie that when it pieces together, it is the ultimate puzzle. It is the ultimate way when it ends, you're just like, I can't believe the ride I just went on. And I'm going back to my earlier characterization, my earlier analogy. I'm not kidding when I say this was Kevin Spacey. I know, terrible person. This was Kaiser Soze. This was Verbal Kint walking out of a police station, his limp going away, his hand straightening up, and him getting in the car and you realizing, holy fucking shit, that's Kaiser Soze. That's what this movie was for me. When it was over, I was just like, I went on a ride that I'm never, ever gonna forget. And it was brutal. It was punishing. It was funny at moments. It was harrowing at moments. It was a thrill ride. It was well acted, well plotted, well written, well shot. If this movie isn't in my top 5 films at the end of the year, what a fucking year we had in 2024, because there's pretty much no chance this isn't going to be on there. And it may be number 1. I can't say for sure because we got to wait till the year plays out. But if this film isn't in my top 5 when we do our best of in December, Patrick, this might be the greatest year of film ever. Because that's how good movies would have to be from here on out to knock this out of that list.
Yeah, this is way, way fucking up there. I wonder where it's gonna. It could land on my regular list. Never mind my horror list. It's a very, very good film. I do again want to thank the people at Miramax, at Magenta Light Studios, and the Strange Film people, the Strange Darling Film people, for giving us a free screener and a free opening event. This is a blast of a movie. I'm not kidding. We wouldn't bother doing a podcast this long to just sing its praises. It's one of the best movies of the year.
Absolutely. And remember, as I said, you can go check out the interviews I did with Willa Fitzgerald, JT Molnar, and Giovanni Ribisi over on our YouTube channel. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead on YouTube. You'll find the videos over there. You'll see the interviews I did. Really cool conversations with all of them. Willa Fitzgerald said this is her favorite character she's ever played. It shows the performance because she's off the fucking charts. It's, again, if you want a little deeper dive and you want to hear what they have to say about the film, and again, those interviews are no spoilers, but once you see the movie and you see the interview, you'll understand it even better, because I had to dance around questions. I was like, this movie is so good, I don't really want to ask you anything specifically because I don't want anyone to know what's going on here. But check out those interviews over on our YouTube channel, and again, I can't say it enough. Go see this in theaters, and at worst, see it at home. Just run. Don't walk. This is not one of those movies where I'm like, well, I didn't like it, but maybe you will. No, fuck yeah. Go see it. Go see this movie. It's that good. Patrick, that's our episode for this week. Of course, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in each and every week to the show. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms. I already mentioned YouTube. If you want to see us and see our reactions and see how much we visually like this movie, go check out our YouTube channel. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. And you can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other podcast outlet out there. And you can also check us out on the website, rewindofthelivingdead.com, where you'll also find horror news, interviews, reviews, and on movies that we don't get to review on the podcast. So go check that out as well. You got questions, movies you'd like us to review, comments about the show, hit us up anytime on email, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's livingdead@gmail.com, or hit us up on social media. You can find us on Twitter /X, Facebook, or Instagram. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. We love hearing from you guys. You guys have been awesome lately, sending us comments and questions and Twitter and everything. It's been awesome lately. I had a weird interaction with Fede Alvarez the other night where I mentioned he had said something about he'd won on the Alien Reddit and he got booted off because they didn't believe it was him. And I said, come on our podcast and talk to us. It's like blew up. I don't know why. He got like 200 likes. And I'm like, hopefully these are people who listen to our podcast and want Fede Alvarez to come on. So join us on Twitter, join us on Instagram, join us on Facebook. We'd love to have you over there as well. And you can also find us on our own personal social media channels. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, for everyone that tunes in each and every week. We will be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Peace.